Yep. Hey, good morning, my relatives. It's Mark Charles. It is Thursday, January 5th, and I am sitting down with my second cup of coffee. If you follow me on social media, you know that this morning I went to a local Ethiopian coffee shop called Sidamo. It's not too far from me here in DC. It's on 8th Street, which is kind of near the Capitol. It's a place I visited before, but I haven't been there since the pandemic, and so it was good to go there this morning and get a good cup of coffee and be back in that familiar environment again. But before I began, let me just do as I always do, which is acknowledge I'm speaking to you from the traditional land of the Piscataway. We now call it Washington, D.C., but I want to honor the Piscataway as the indigenous and original hosts of this land. I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands. And I want to state once again just how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. So I hope everyone's morning is going well. Let me see who's on. Phil Fox. Yeah. Hey, Ben. Good morning, my brothers. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me this morning. I am trying to get a bit more regular about doing my second cups of coffee. I want to start them a bit earlier, and I want to make them a little bit shorter. So I'm slowly moving in that direction. My one on Tuesday, I think, started about 12:15 Eastern time. My one yesterday began at about 11:55 or 58, and this morning it's about 11:45. So I'm slowly moving earlier. I'm getting them a little bit shorter each time, and I'm just getting better at about kind of making them a little bit tighter, hopefully. But anyway, who's on? Amanda. Yeah. Hey, thank you for joining this morning. I'm glad to see you here. It's very good to have you on this morning. And Mr. Phil Fox, thank you. I always appreciate the land acknowledgement you give for where you live in Michigan. And so it's great to have you on this morning as well. But yeah, so if you follow me on social media, I tweeted something last night that you probably saw. And I'm going to share it in the link again, where I wrote, after six failed votes to elect the Trump-backed candidate, who is Kevin McCarthy, perhaps it's time for the GOP to acknowledge that they have no leader. And Liz Cheney was correct. Conservatives are actually two very distinct and separate parties that have been divided, not unified by Donald Trump. If you haven't been following very closely, the every new Congress that begins every 2 years, the majority party, well, the entire House of Representatives elects a speaker, a leader of the House, and it generally, almost always, falls to the majority parties because they have the majority of the votes. However, this year, Kevin McCarthy, who has been working to become the Speaker of the House for a number of years, he actually tried back in 2015 to become the Speaker as well. He has not been able to secure enough votes. He needs 218 votes to become the Speaker. And they started out with 19, and now there are 20 very conservative House members who are opposed to his speakership. And so they've gone through 6 votes now, 3 on Tuesday and 3 on Wednesday, all of which resulted in no one getting over 50% of the vote. And the highest vote getter has actually been the Democratic candidate, because all the Democrats are unified behind their minority leader in the House. But anyway, so it's become a very embarrassing thing. And so what I stated yesterday it's very apparent, right? So the apparent leader of the Republican Party, who would be typically Donald Trump, who not only is the former president and the leader of that party, but he is now running again for another term in the 2024 election. And he has publicly backed and advocated for McCarthy. And it's interesting because the 20 people who are opposing McCarthy are actually MAGA, ultra conservative Trump supporters. and yet they're not listening to Trump. They're not supporting who he's backing, which is just showing his waning power and how this movement that he kind of headlined for a number of years has actually grown beyond him. And it's made it very apparent that there is a lack of leadership within the Republican Party. And we saw that. We actually saw that being addressed with Liz Cheney, who was the co-chair of the January 6th committee. This is the committee that the Republican leadership refused to back, but there were several members of the Republican Party who joined the committee anyway, including Liz Cheney. And she was a vocal critic of Donald Trump and of what many in the Republican Party did to back the January 6th insurrection. And she repeatedly spoke to Republicans, telling them that Donald Trump did not represent conservative values and was not representing them, and calling on them to actually go back to their own roots. And as I observed her, I was pretty sure, and there's still a chance she will probably run for the presidency in 2024. And I think what she's going to try and do, because while there is a very vocal MAGA section of the Republican Party, there's also a very anti-MAGA section of the Republican Party who understand and see very clearly that Donald Trump does not represent their conservative values and does not represent their party or who they are well, and they are very much disturbed by him. And I'm pretty certain that Liz Cheney is going to try and gather that group and kind of lead and even run in opposition to Donald Trump in 2024. I wouldn't be surprised if she did that. And really, for her intents and purposes, is treating the Republican Party like it's two distinct parties. You have the MAGA followers and you have the actual conservatives who understand that Trump does not represent them or their values. And so she already saw that split right 2 years ago when she joined the December 6th committee. And I would actually argue began campaigning to that conservative branch at the very beginning. I think that's why one of the reasons why she took such a bold stand was she wanted to rally that group away from Donald Trump and back to some of their more conservative values. But anyway, so I think she's seen that for a long time, but now it's very clear that no one in the Republican Party has control over the party. Donald Trump can't control it. Kevin McCarthy can't control it. Ironically, while all of this was going down, Mitch McConnell, this minority leader, Republican leader in the Senate, was actually at a bipartisan promotion for a bill that he and President Biden worked on together in where is he? He's not in. I want to say Louisiana. It's not Louisiana. In wherever he is, wherever Mitch McConnell is from. But anyway, it was ironic that he wasn't there, and he's also very much staying out of this, at least publicly, and he is not voicing anything. It's also very ironic that no one is really speaking for the party right now, or has the ability to speak for the party. And so it was interesting when I made that point yesterday, because these are things that I've been thinking about and I've been observing about the Republican Party for a while. But this morning, an article in the New York Times caught my eye, titled "Nobody's in Charge, a Ragged GOP Stumbles Through the Wilderness." And it looks very closely at this lack of leadership in the GOP right now. And then AP had a very similar article that they published this morning, where they talked about how the speaker fight is exposing this leadership vacuum within the Republican Party. And so, I think this is a very real problem that the Republicans are going to need to deal with, because they don't have any clear vision. They don't have anything that unifies them as a party. and they're really struggling right now to know who they are. I mean, everyone's kind of against everything, but that means what does the party stand for? And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this leadership bid and the continued voting that's going on today in the House. But then what that means for this whole rest of the term. If they can't even come together clearly on a leader, then this is going to be even harder to set an agenda for the next 2 years. And then this was an interesting thing. I found this out yesterday, but there's been a lot of talk about this is the first time in 100 years that we have not no party has been able to elect a speaker on the first vote, and the last time was in 1923. But this isn't the longest. Even now with 6 votes, this isn't the longest that it's taken. In 1855 and 1856, when the enslavement of African people was the debate of the day, it actually took almost 2 months and 133 votes to elect a speaker. And so what we're seeing today is not what happened 150 years ago, over 150 years ago. But so it's not unprecedented. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that there was actually a point where we went without a speaker for 2 months back in 1855 and 1856. And so then the other interesting thing, I don't have an article about this, but so during this period, because the Speaker of the House is the third in line to the presidency, right? If something were to happen to Joe Biden, first Kamala Harris would be in line for the presidency. If something happened to her, then normally it would be the Speaker of the House. But because we don't have a Speaker of the House right now, it wouldn't be the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. It would be the Senate pro tempore, and I forget her name. But it would be the person in the Senate who would now be the third in line for the presidency. So anyway, it's just an interesting moment in time right now. Another article I just wanted to highlight for people, and let me see if there's any chat or any statements going on in here about this. But yeah, these are just a few interesting things that I've seen. But another interesting thing that I saw in the news this morning is President Biden is actually going to visit El Paso this weekend, and it's going to be his first trip to the border since taking office. He's going down for a summit in Mexico next week, and so he's visiting the border to see what's going on firsthand. And I find it ironic that he's making this visit literally just a few days after it was noted in the media that Democratic governors and mayors are now sending migrants to places like New York City and Chicago, right? Formerly, this had been a stunt pulled only by Republicans, but now Denver and Colorado, their governor and mayors, the mayor and the governor in Colorado have been planning to send migrants that are in their city to places like Chicago and New York City, because they say they don't have the resources to deal with the migrants. And it's ironic that A, they're not on the border, they're not border states, but B, these are also Democratic leaders, not Republican leaders. And so it's interesting that maybe this is what now got President Biden's attention to say, yeah, we need to do something, because now he's actually going to the border and he's supposed to be making some kind of statement about that. So anyway, it will be interesting to see what happens with that. Just one of the other stories that I've been following and I want to kind of keep in touch with. The other thing I wanted to share with you, and this is just for those who have been following. As you may know, I am a Southwest Airlines. I use Southwest Airlines a lot when I travel. I actually really like them, and they've had a huge debacle this past season, this past few weeks, because of the way Southwest does their flights, right, where they don't have a hub Like, most airlines have hubs, and then they go out like spokes from those hubs. But Southwest goes point to point. And so if there is a delay or a cancellation in one city, it can cause kind of a domino effect throughout the entire country. And so Southwest, while all of the airlines had disruptions for a day or two around Christmas and between Christmas and New Year's, Southwest was down for almost a week, maybe even a bit longer, because of both the way that they do their flights, but also because their scheduling software is so far behind. And so I fortunately was not flying any of these days. I know a lot of people who were, and I've heard and read some of the horror stories that were out there. But I heard a few things over the news, and then I read a few articles this morning. But apparently, Southwest is extending some of their reward benefits. It looks like they're extending their companion pass benefits. Usually they expire at the end of the year. And it sounds like some of their benefits they're extending through the end of January, both the use of the benefit as well as qualifying for the benefit for next year because of all the disrupted flights that happened in late December and early January. And I've read they're giving bonus points to some of their flyers who had their travel disrupted. So read this article. I don't know anything certain about all of it, but it is interesting that Southwest is trying to address some of these issues going on. And I think that's good, but I also think, yeah, I'm curious. I don't think any of this will affect me. I didn't have any travel disrupted by them, but it is interesting to see some of the ways that they're trying to address some of the problems. Of course, they're also committing to upgrade their software and their hardware to schedule and stuff like that. But this is just some of the things they're trying to do. So those are a few things that have been kind of catching my attention as I've been watching the news this week. But one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit more about is on Tuesday I talked about an article. It was written by someone who heard a speech by Jeff Bezos, who talked about he would begin his work day at 10 a.m. and he would spend his mornings puttering around, is the words he used, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper, hanging out with his kids, just being around the house. And then he would start going to the office at 10. This is even when he was CEO of Amazon, and he would go and not start his day until 10. And if you follow me on social media, you know I've been trying to be more intentional about going out. Yeah, I don't have a massively set schedule, but I have a fair number of phone calls and planning meetings and scheduling things I have to do. And I usually start those around 10 a.m. But I drop my daughters off for school at around 8:30. And so there's usually an hour and a half, which I've tended to use to run errands and do other things. And this week I've been more intentional to go out and sit in a coffee shop and catch up on news, or just kind of be out in the public space and kind of relax and enjoy a good cup of coffee and just kind of take that time for myself as I gear up for the day. And I did that this morning again. I've gone to a few of my local favorite coffee shops this morning, and this morning I went to one of my other favorite coffee shops not too far from me. It's called Sidamo Coffee and Tea. It's on H Street. It's a great Ethiopian coffee shop. And I just sat there for about 45 minutes or so and drank my coffee and enjoyed just being out and enjoying a good cup of coffee. And I've actually found that by doing this, it really kind of energizes me for the rest of the day. By not starting my day solely with errands and doing busy work, but by taking some intentional time just to get on top of the news of the day, to sit, respond to, maybe make a phone call or two, or look over some of my social media, or respond to a few texts or email messages, and just kind of relate to people, be out in the open space and sit and have a more relaxed time puttering around. it's really been a great way to kind of start my day. And I'm hoping to continue that through most of 2023. I really want to find a way to make my work life more productive. And I think by taking an intentional time early in the morning to kind of set the tone for the day, it seems to be helping, at least this week. And so I want to encourage you as you think about changes you're making for 2023, and what are some ways that you can grab moments of the day, whether it's taking a walk at work or doing something else, where you can kind of just take some time to feed your own soul, or to do something that you enjoy, so that you can carry that with you through the rest of the day. And I found that by doing this, I've actually had a very good week. I've been able to be more consistent with some of the things I want to be doing, been able to have more clarity in my thoughts later in the day, and I've just really enjoyed getting out. Right, I during the pandemic, I did not get out much at all, and it's been really nice to get out in public again and just be around the city. I there's so many things to do and see around DC. I really like living here, and so it's been nice to kind of get out in those spaces again and just kind of sit and drink coffee and be out, and who knows who you'll run into. But anyway, so I wanted to just kind of talk a bit more about that puttering around component, and let you know it's something I've actually have found very beneficial even in just these past few days. So those are some things I'm thinking about. Those are the few things going on. I'm going to continue to follow what's going on in the house, and I'm continuing to think about. I haven't forgotten about the January 6th report. That is very much on my agenda of things I want to be talking about and getting out more. I mentioned about a week ago that I'm reading through that, and I will definitely be sharing some thoughts about that over the next few weeks. But yeah, it's not a bad day here in DC. I'm enjoying my second cup of coffee. It's good to be on with all of you. And thanks for joining me for a few moments this morning. I hope you have a great day. Walk in beauty, my relatives. And may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Go on there.